Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is going to be another in my RHCSA practice session series where I am taking objectives from the RHCSA exam and showing you what I will do to prepare for those objectives. The videos aren't necessarily intended to be authoritative information, but I do try to make the information accurate. This video is going to be the second of two about scheduling tasks using AT and cron. Before we dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video and invite everyone, if you enjoy the content of the video, make sure you click like. And if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you click that subscribe button and ring the bell when you do, so that way you can be notified of when new content comes available. So without further ado, let's jump into scheduling more tasks. Even though I covered AT and cron pretty well in the previous video, there's one other program that needs to be mentioned and discussed when working with scheduling tasks using AT and cron for Linux. Now, this isn't explicitly listed on the objectives, and I can't tell you whether or not you'll run into it on the exam, and even if I did know whether or not you would run into it on the exam, I can't tell you anyway because of NDA agreements and such. But that program is something called anacron, and anacron is important because it addresses a key limitation to cron, and that is the fact that cron assumes that you're always going to have your machine on all the time, and it cannot handle a power outage or something to be able to run a task that might have missed its time in the day due to the power outage but still needs to run that day. Anacron does handle that. So let's dive into the configuration of anacron. I'm here as root on my CentOS system, and we're going to go to etc. and we're going to cat a file called the anacron tab. So what this is showing you with the anacron tab are a couple of things. I'm going to go from the bottom up with the configuration. What we're going to be working with today is the cron.daily tasks for anacron. The same thing applies to weekly and monthly as well. So if we take a look at this line here, the first field in this says period in days. And so what this means is that this particular job is going to run every 1 day. The second field is delay in minutes. So when it's time to run the job, it will delay 5 minutes prior to running that particular job. That might be in up to 5 minutes. I can't remember off the top of my head. The third field is going to be the name of the job. And in this case, the name of the job is cron.daily. That's what the job identifier means here. And then the rest of the fields are going to be the command and any other parameters that command has. And so what's actually running for this cron.daily job is the nice command. And the nice command is running an application called run-parts. And the parameter for run-parts is going to be etc cron daily. So moving a little bit further up, we have this job will be started during the following hours only. This is a variable start hours range that you can configure if you want, and we actually will when we won't configure for our test. The random delay is something that we'll configure. But what this means is that the jobs for anacron are going to only run between the third hour of the day, so 3 a.m. up to the 22nd hour, up to 10 p.m. If the timestamp is outside of that particular range, then anacron is not going to attempt to run these jobs. And then the next field is the random delay. And so this is up to 45 minutes of delay before the job is run. And one of the reasons why you have this is just to where you prevent trying to have like every job running at the same time. And this is something that can be configured. So the way this works with the delay in minutes is when anacron runs, it's going to have it whatever the random delay is, and then it'll add an additional 5-minute delay and then run the task for anacron tab, which I think contradicted something that I mentioned a moment ago. But sometimes you lose track of the facts when you're just talking off the top of your head. Anyway, back to it. So a change that we're going to make with this is actually we're going to change this random delay to 0. And the reason being that'll keep the example test that we do from us having to wait, or me having to wait for forever for something to be able to run. So we'll vi etc anacron tab. We're going to change this random delay to 0. So let's cat it just to make sure that that persists, and it does. Random delay equals 0. And notice that each of these jobs here, the cron.daily, cron.weekly, cron.monthly, it is running whatever is in these particular directories. So cron.daily, weekly, and monthly. So let's take a look at the cron.daily directory. Clear our screen and ls, and we see that there is log rotate. Now, notice that this is an executable file. If I were to do ls-l, we have log rotate, permissions are 755. And if we were to vi this, notice that this is just a script, rather than when we were working with the cron.d directory and working with the actual cron tab, we had to dictate, hour or minute, hour, day of the month, month of the year, day of the week, on and on for that. Here, that's already been configured in the anacron tab. So what we actually have in the directories themselves are the actual scripts that we want to be run. Now you can add an entry to anacron tab and just give it a one-off command to run, and that's perfectly fine. But what I have found just with my use of it, which hasn't been extravagant, that we tend to just put whatever scripts and such that we want into the cron.daily, monthly, or weekly directories to be able to run. All right, so for our test, what we're going to do is make a script. We're just going to call it testing anacron. And we'll do our shebang bin bash. We'll just make this echo anacron has run at, we'll do a subshell for date. If you watched my other video on just AT and cron, you'll see this is a pretty common little script I do if I'm testing out how scheduled tasks work. And actually what we'll do is, let's see, so I want to run that, and I want to echo that actually to a file. So we'll just echo to root, echo to root, testing anacron txt. We'll do the same thing. So that way we have a space that happens in the file. Save that. We're going to set the permission 755 for testing anacron. And so as far as the actual configuration for anacron, that's it. We just simply drop the script that we want, make sure it's executable, and anacron will take care of the rest. So the question becomes, how does anacron know when to fire off its scheduled task? Well, we know part of the answer, and part of that is with the delay, which we have set the delay to 0. So right now it's not going to have any particular delay when it tries to run. And then for the individual job, we kept that delay at 5. So 0 plus 5 equals 5 minutes after it attempts to start, then it's going to run the tasks. So the way anacron knows whether or not it has actually run the tasks within the day is from a file within the var spool directory, actually var spool anacron directory. So let's navigate to there. And within this directory, we have 3 files, cron.daily, cron.monthly, and cron.weekly. So if I were to cat cron.daily, we see that there's nothing in there. And the reason being is anacron has not run yet for today. Once it does run, then it's going to input the date within cron.daily, and that's how it knows that it doesn't need to run again. The next time the anacron would attempt to run, it'll check cron.daily. It'll see that there's a date in there, and that date matches the current date, and so therefore don't run anything. So now the question becomes, all right, how does anacron know when to run? Well, I did a little bit of research on this prior to doing the video because I was actually real curious about that myself. And depending on your system will determine how often anacron actually checks to see if it needs to run any scripts. I haven't seen this yet, but I'm told that you might see anacron as a service. So, systemctl status anacron, make sure that service is running. That's not the case on this system. Instead, this is how anacron, at least on this particular CentOS system, knows when to run. So if we were to go into etc cron d, you should remember this from the previous video, there is a task called 0 hourly. So if we were to cat 0 hourly, if I spell that right, that might be a little bit better. Well, let me clear my screen and cat that again so it's at the top. So the job hourly within cron.d is going to run the first minute of every hour, and it's going to be run by root. It's going to run the command etc run parts, and it's going to run everything that's within the cron.hourly directory. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about what run parts is. That's an application specifically for doing scheduled task stuff, but you can certainly take a look at that within the man pages. So let's go into etc cron.hourly. So within here, we have a script that is 0 anacron. So let's cat that script. Let me clear my screen, and then we'll cat it. That's pretty long. So actually, let's clear the screen again. Let's vim into 0 hourly. No, not 0 hourly, 0 anacron. So this script is testing whether or not the cron.daily has a date that matches the current date. And if it does, then it's just going to exit. It also does a check about battery power. I assume that's going to be, if you're running anacron on a laptop, like you have a backup job or something, you might not want the backup job to run when it's just on battery power. Not quite sure necessarily why you'd want that, but that's something that is there. And of course, you can alter this script if you need to. But what it's going to do, once it checks to see if the date equals, or the date that's in the cron.daily file equals that, then if it does equal it, it's going to just exit. Otherwise, it will eventually run the anacron-s command. And then from that point, the script finishes. So the anacron-s command, if I were to quit out of this and man anacron, we see that -s serializes the execution of jobs. Anacron does not start a new job before the previous one has finished. So since our current cron.daily has 2 jobs, it has the log rotate as well as the little test job that we've actually, I might be telling you wrong about that. The jobs would be mentioned in the anacron tab file. So that would actually be kind of a curious test. I'm not going to do it on this particular video, but I might maybe add a line to the log rotate file that maybe echoes out the date and time to a file, just to see if this serialization execution of jobs refers to the actual scripts or the jobs within anacron tab. I want to think it's going to talk about jobs with anacron tab, but if you're a master of anacron and know the answer to that, feel free to leave that in the comments. I would love to learn myself. And knowing me, I'm annoyed when I don't know something, so I'm probably going to research this right after doing the video. Anyway, what happens is anacron-s is run, and then anacron is going to check its own anacron tab to see what jobs are there and then run them accordingly. So that's how anacron knows when to run. It's actually a cron job that runs anacron, which then checks its own anacron tab to see if it has jobs, and then if it does, it uses the delay parameters that are there to determine when to run the jobs. And then it has the files within the var spool anacron directory to see whether or not anacron has actually run for that day. So this gets back to the original use case of anacron as far as from just cron perspective. Let's say that it's currently 14:47 on January 15th. If I had a job that was scheduled to run at this time and it doesn't because the machine wasn't powered on, if I power on the machine, job's still not going to run. However, with anacron, once it hits that first of the next hour, anacron will run, see that there is no January 15th that's in the var spool anacron cron.daily file, and then run the task. So to put this into action here, let's go back to our home directory. We don't have any type of file yet. And if I were to cat the var spool anacron cron.daily file, we see there's nothing here yet. And the reason being is I started this video before we hit the top of the hour. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this on the exam, but just to simulate how this would work, we're going to work with time date CTL to work with the computer's clock to trick anacron into running. So we'll do time date CTL. First, we're going to set NTP to false. All right, we do that because otherwise it's not going to let us manipulate the time. So let's do time date CTL, set time, and we're going to set this to 14. Actually, we're going to set it to 1500. So you see the time at the top of my VM here changes to 1500, and we're going to pause for just a moment and see if anacron tab actually runs when we think that it should, which would be at the very top of the first minute after the top of the hour. So it's 1501. Let's see what's happened. So ls, there's nothing in here, but we know that the cron.hourly says that, hey, 1501, we need to run anacron. The reason that we don't see anything here yet is because of those delays. So if we take a look at that anacron tab again, we see that even though the random delay is set to 0 for things in cron.daily, there's still a delay of 5 minutes that's added. So we're going to pause once again, wait a couple more minutes, and see if we have a different result in about 5 minutes. And we're back. I went ahead and cleared my screen and moved to my home directory, so let's see what happens. And there's nothing here. Okay, that is unexpected. Let's take a look at journalctl-g and let's search for anacron. If I spell journalctl, that'll probably help. All right, so we see that anacron did run. Let's cat the var spool anacron cron.daily. All right, so anacron did run, but the script itself did not. So let's see if we figure out what's going on. Let's just try running the script itself and see what happens. All right, so clearly I have a syntax error. So let's vi etc cron.daily, testing anacron. Yep, and I see it right there. We have an extra quotation mark. All right, so that should solve the problem. Let's try running the script again. Okay, so that solved the problem. So anacron actually did run, however, the script didn't run. So let's see if we can trick anacron into running again. So we're going to time date CTL, set time. We're going to set it to 2021, January 16, 1500. All right, and we'll pause for just a moment to give anacron a chance to run. I probably could use time date CTL to trick it into getting back past its 5-minute barrier, but I'll just pause and then restart the video. All right, so I lied. I got impatient and tried to use the time date CTL to get past the delay for anacron, and I don't think that it worked because right when it turned to 1506, I didn't see anything. So I guess that particular timer doesn't necessarily use the actual date command for that. But anyway, let's clear our screen. See our testing anacron is there. Let's cat that. Testing anacron.txt, and we see that anacron has run on January 16th. And let's check the var spool anacron cron.daily. And we see it was last run on January 16th. Let's take a look at journalctl. So this is curious. So there it is, 1501. It did run, but it was locked. Not quite sure what that is. And then let's see, finish that. Then at 1508, which I guess that makes sense because I think it was 1503 when I got impatient and I changed the time date to be 1506. So maybe that's what messed with it. I should have been patient and just waited like any other person. But you see the general functionality of how anacron determines, when it needs to run and how to configure it. You can, as seen by the fact that the way anacron runs is actually by running the anacron command. If you did need to just one-off run everything and have it ignore timestamps, then you could use the -F option, which will make all of your jobs run regardless of what the timestamp is in the anacron files for var spool anacron, and then the cron.daily, cron.hourly, cron.monthly, or not cron.hourly, cron.weekly, cron.monthly. So I hope you found these two videos helpful for you in your studies for your RHCSA exam as far as looking at scheduled tasks. Remember, if you enjoyed the content of the video, make sure you click like, and also feel free to leave comments and ask questions. I'll answer them as I both have ability and have time to do so. I want to thank again returning subscribers for watching another video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you click that subscribe button and ring the bell. Thanks for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.